Monetary history, it seems a total mystery, cause everything we're taught to light is motive for publicity. I read 100 books and struggle to find clarity. Thousands of opinions and most of them just embarrass me. Lies from the governed class, bullshit flowing through the mass. Pile on the tax, got the money printer flowing fast. Hit us in our pockets, we the victims of inflation. As a money printer, I find another way for caking. Orange pill, orange pill, orange pill. Stacking Bitcoin, we don't do dollar bills. My sovereignty is here and you know it's here to stay. Fiat wouldn't wanna be it, please go the fuck away. Orange pill, orange pill, orange pill. Show it to my friends, let them know this shit is real. It never leaves, show them how to get it back. The pill here to stay, got the motherfuckers mad. Financial freedom may seem far away, as they push us right down every day. Try to make it seem that there's no hope, or a way to the gates where the big dough flows. They don't even really want us outside. The parks staying closed, pools running out dry. You can't stop freedom and you can't stop love. It spreads like wildfire with this orange pill drug. Our minds are growing, we all start knowing. Fix the money, fix the world, and it all starts showing. We start mowing down all the hate, freedom in our finance, yeah we pile on the cake. Orange pill, orange pill, orange pill. Stacking Bitcoin, we don't do dollar bills. My sovereignty is here and you know it's here to stay. Fiat wouldn't wanna be it, please go the fuck away.
What up, Vigilantes? I'm here with the creators of Opnet. How are you guys doing today?
Hello, hello. Doing well, man. Exciting day today. We just put out the Opnet testnet, so been a fun day.
So today you guys had a space, and I jumped in, and I said something that a lot of people maybe thought was a pretty big deal. In my honest opinion, Opnet is the point of inflection that we can look back and say this was probably the most important moment in Bitcoin crypto history. And I don't say that about many projects, but the reason why I'm saying this is because Opnet, in a nutshell, will bring all of altcoin experimentation, specifically from Ethereum, back to Bitcoin. So what's going on here, guys? What's going on? Are you guys, is Bitcoin the Ethereum killer?
ETH was a testnet. That's what we like to say, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. Like, again, it's ambitious for sure. Obviously, we hope that we agree with you. We hope that that is the impact that this has. We designed it in a way that hopefully can fulfill the ambition that we're trying to, there's an ambitious nature in what we're trying to do. And we designed the protocol in order to, I guess, hopefully fulfill that ambition. Like, again, the basic protocol design doesn't have a gas token. It's Bitcoin native. And yeah, again, at the lowest level, we really want to just see more experimentation and more building on Bitcoin layer 1 and expanding what you can do with Bitcoin. Yeah, and again, obviously, if everything goes really, really well, so to some degree, some of it's out of our hands. We really just want to put the tools out for developers to come in and start experimenting on Bitcoin layer 1. And as they do, I think that if they build good applications, capital will flow in, and then I think people will really be able to maximize the potential of Bitcoin. Because I agree, again, Bitcoin, there's no reason why Bitcoin shouldn't be the ETH killer. I mean, just even in a really basic way, just in strictly speaking towards people who've never used crypto before, getting people to understand Bitcoin itself, which is the jumping point for anyone getting into crypto, is difficult enough. And then you've got layers and layers and layers of different altcoins and different other blockchains that all do different types of things. There's a lot of nuance between them. And so trying to get into, let's just say, something like DeFi with somebody requires you to explain Bitcoin, then requires you to explain Bitcoin's limitations. They have to accept Bitcoin in the first place, understand its limitations, and then accept this whole new blockchain, Ethereum, which, again, there's philosophical reasons why people don't like Ethereum in the first place.
Wait. We're getting real deep into it. Let's explain real quickly what Opnet is for people who don't understand what it is.
Please. So what is Opnet?
Opnet is a layer 1 meta protocol on Bitcoin that is specifically designed for smart contracts. So the easiest way to envision it is think of the ordinal client, how the ordinal client is specifically for like non-fungible tokens.
Yes.
Imagine that, but it was made for smart contracts. That's the simplest way to understand it. There's no other blockchains involved. There's no other layers involved. There's no other tokens involved. It's just Bitcoin and a Unisat wallet, Xverse wallet, whatever you want. So we work on the same kind of like concept of inscribing. It's not an ordinal inscription. We like to call them smart inscriptions because these inscriptions are either deployments of a smart contract, which is just, byte code into a tap script, portion of a transaction, the same way that ordinals exist. Or it's a contract interaction, which is also what's called call data for people who are less familiar with like Ethereum. Basically, it's the byte code of what you want to do on that smart contract. So it's the same concept as inscribing within a Bitcoin transaction, and then that data exists on the blockchain forever now because it's part of the blockchain itself. We kind of, there's this concept of sats that ordinals are based off of, which makes total sense for like an NFT protocol, right? If you want to turn Bitcoin into basically trackable units of non-fungible tokens, like a serial number on a dollar bill, basically, that totally makes sense. But we don't use the same kind of sat tracking. Instead, what we do is we abstracted that concept of linking data to like a Bitcoin thing with smart contract addresses. So we use Bitcoin addresses as the pointer basically for specific smart contracts that are deployed on chain, the same way that sats are used as a pointer or point of reference for ownership of specific data on chain. We basically have just abstracted the exact same layers of the ordinal client because obviously the ordinal client has something special, there's been a lot of different attempts to do NFTs on Bitcoin, but none of them really had any kind of success or market capture until the bull market ended and everything kind of reset in the bear market. But B was ordinals don't require any other token. There's no like ordinal gas token that you need to inscribe a thing. Like Casey just made something that was cool and he put it out there, and because it's cool and it's free to use, there's no edge that's given to the creator. Then that it is taken off. So in a smart contract kind of landscape, obviously like a gas token is going to make it very easy to raise money to build this thing or to give incentives for people to build on your layer. We've decided not to do that, so we didn't raise any money to build Opnet, and there is no Opnet profit model. Basically, we don't earn any money natively from the use or adoption of Opnet. Because we want the value to accrue to, we subscribe to this thing called the fat app thesis, which is basically the idea that like before protocols like blockchains existed, the stock market existed in a level where there were technical protocols like HTTP, TCP, email, all these different things, but you couldn't own those technical protocols. Like the market, the speculative market was built and played only on the applications built on top of the protocols. So it was this very like natural progression of the good protocols are good because they're just good. There's no financial model for anyone to adopt certain protocols. Now talk about crypto, and the tech doesn't always line up with what is the market perceives to be valuable because you can own these underlying protocols. So Bitcoin is kind of like the unique player in this crypto world where it stayed number one as a protocol and no real applications have been built on top of it. Like you can kind of see the interest of ordinals and BRC20s as like exposure to what could happen if there's actual applications built on Bitcoin. So we don't want to add like a third layer in between Bitcoin and the apps. We just want to facilitate the ability to build apps so they can accrue value there. And then for us, that's like MotoSwap. That's the application that we build, which is a DEX. So we don't make any money directly from Opnet. We only make money if our application does well, and it's the same game as everybody else.
Awesome. Chad, in your own words, why Opnet? Why did you guys decide to do this? What's the motivation behind this?
Again, I had said this on the spaces that we were on, and we'll get really lame right away. Like Danny and I are like we're dreamers. Like we're not super technical developers. We have a team of developers who's helped us and done a lot of the design work for this thing. And a huge part of that is like. And this is why I feel like there's actually a lot of similarity that we have on a philosophical level, because when we saw ordinals come about, we were degenning on all the other blockchains possible and funneling our profits into Bitcoin and funneling our profits into projects that we thought were innovative for DeFi. And when ordinals came
There's
about,
a case of being too early though. Yeah.
right, right. When ordinals came about, we saw, okay, people are now interested, and now there's a way you can really do stuff on mainnet Bitcoin. And it was just NFTs, but we knew that it would evolve, and it did evolve. And people tried to, within the ordinal tech stack, do tokens, which was, obviously Ordi and BRC20. Inevitably, runes came about, but there was never really a path for something like DeFi or application development to ever exist. And that really comes down to the fundamental level. And we can get into that at a different time. But we decided at a certain point, we have to start experimenting ourselves. We have to start building ourselves. And, we attracted, I think, through our philosophy and through, putting out what we wanted to exist into the world. We attracted a team of developers that were also really interested in building something along those lines. We also attracted a community who believed in what could be in the future for Bitcoin, and we're actively interested in doing that without having to wait for someone else to do it for them. And that is really why we designed Opnet, why we built Opnet, is that we really want to see this happen. We want to see app development happen on Bitcoin layer 1. And it's not like we're sitting in a corner crazy. There's a huge bullish narratives that are surrounding app development on Bitcoin, including DeFi on Bitcoin, which you can ask VCs on every level, people who do this full time, who have full teams of researchers and quants, that DeFi on Bitcoin is going to be the narrative that propels the next major bull run. Yet you look around the Bitcoin ecosystem and money's being thrown around at a lot of layer 2 solutions, at a lot of random stuff that has really nothing to do with Bitcoin layer 1. Even though Bitcoin layer 1 DeFi is sort of this golden goose that everyone is really bullish on.
Yeah, it's what everyone wants. It's what everyone has been desiring for years. Yes.
Absolutely. And we just didn't see anyone building it. And so we decided, okay, we have to do this. And there are compromises that we had to make in terms of a profit model, in terms of like, yeah, we don't make any money directly off this. There is no extra gas token, but it has to be like that, or else it's never going to catch. It's never going to catch on. Again, like there have been layer 2 type solutions that are sort of close to the concept of what we want to do. You have Rootstock or Sovereign, or I can name, there's a million different layer 2 or sidechain type things that you can name that are trying to bring this programmability aspect to Bitcoin, but nothing actually does it in the confines of the layer 1. And of course, you have people in the drive chain world, you have people in the Opcat world who are trying to push for changes to be made at the core of Bitcoin. But yourself as someone who is a big fan of BSV, getting changes pushed to Bitcoin is not something that's very easy. And there's a lot of politics involved. So you have to be able to do this in a way that no one can stop you from doing this. It's something that you have to put out into the world. It's an open source, free to use meta protocol, just like ordinals. And yeah, again, it's up to really the market and the builders and the way we designed it, if people accept it and start building on it.
I'll say, so guys, please explain to me in layman's terms, because everyone here is dying to know, how are you doing this without having to ask for permission? Like, how does this work?
Well, we took
it's basically it's because we're making a non-for-profit model, basically. Right. Like the Ordinal client was successful because Casey did it, and Runes, like, to be honest, and BRC20. There's no gas tokens for any of these like successful meta protocols. And then there's been a lot of attempts to do programmability on top of ordinals, or on top, tap and all these types of things. But they all get kind of caught up in the need for multiple tokens for governance or tokens for gas. And it just like is too confusing to the user, and it doesn't feel like it's Bitcoin L1 either.
Right. It's hard to build. It's expensive to hire teams of devs to build something like this. It's not something that you can just spin up in a day. So again, like a lot of other people's approaches have been, okay, I'm starting from zero, so I need to hire developers. How do I hire developers? I need funding. How do I get funding? Well, I need to have some sort of token that I can sell to investors early on in order to seed my project and actually see it through. Our unique advantage was that we already had a project with a token, which again, the genesis of that came from sort of, it was not really intentional.
It
Danny
was
and
a
I,
CTO. We CTO'd a
yeah,
very early BRC20 token
Which one?
called
Which one?
Oshi. It was
Oshi.
called
Yeah, I remember
Oshi.
Oshi.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we CTO'd that basically over the course of when was it? It was like September, October is when we like actually kind of proposed, okay, we're gonna fork away from this old team.
So for everyone
Um,
watching, CTO means community take over. So
right.
the community takes over a project from the original devs, and now it's a community-driven endeavor.
Yeah, because
Exactly.
that token was one of the first BRC20 tokens to mint out in general. It was very, very
Yeah.
early. And it was kind of one of the first tokens that had this idea of doing DeFi with tokens on Bitcoin. So it had a community of like 1,500 people that were super aligned in the vision. You know, again, this is like the dreamer community of the Modo and Opnet people is everybody's aligned on this idea of what we could be doing on Bitcoin, but they just don't see it happening yet. So rather than like start over a project, we were like, yeah, let's just this is already has the support. So that was almost a year ago now, and there's still people, a lot of people from that day who are still in the Moto community.
Yeah, and the way we did it is that we bootstrapped effectively. We took over the community from the team that started it because they were scamming and selling their tokens, dumping and not building anything, etc. So we found that out, took it over, and had to do some research on how do you actually do this? Because I actually think the original intention of that team was to build something, and they realized what they wanted to build, which is a Bitcoin DEX, is not possible with BRC20. And instead of going through all of the research and development in order to actually get that done, they just were like, all right, fuck it, we're just going to dump our tokens. And we obviously were not going to stand for that. So we took over the project and started Modo, airdropped. So we didn't do anything with Oshi. We just started a new project and airdropped all of the
It was basically
supply.
like one Oshi token was a voucher for the next token,
No
right?
way.
Yeah,
Right.
That's cool.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And
So
and
we
then we
airdropped.
launched CBRC20, which is
Right,
like a
right.
fork of BRC20 because we wanted to actually make a DEX. So we were like, okay, we're not going to wait for BRC20 to give us permission to start building this. We forked that and we basically we like made it a little bit better. It was a little bit better than BRC20. And then we airdropped all of the people who held that previous token, the Moto token, and then we'll do the exact same thing for Opnet because the CBRC is all being migrated into Opnet as well. So it's been multiple stages of experimentation, but we have yet to put out any mainnet DEX because we are like fully committed to it's either gonna be Uniswap on Bitcoin or it's gonna be nothing. Like we're not gonna do custodial solutions. I mean, respect to the people who are doing it because that's the best you can do right now with the current tools, but that's not what we want MotoSwap to be. So that's what led to like the creation of us making Opnet is this is the only way. And to do that, it has to be this like fair everybody. We can't give Moto some kind of edge within Opnet where Moto is the gas token or like that. That just doesn't make it's just a way to pump all of our bags, but it doesn't really make any sense for the long term. I want to see Aave. I want to see Wi-Fi. I want to see all the Ohm. I want to see all these types of things happen on Bitcoin, and hopefully they trade on MotoSwap.
Right.
Wow.
Right. Yeah, and we were able to bootstrap our community, which we already had a token circulating that we held a little bit of the team supply for. And basically, we raised with a very small amount, about 2% of the token supply for Moto. We raised some capital with a couple of angels, friends and family, and a few select VCs that really just believe heavily in the vision of what we want as well, which is to see DeFi on Bitcoin. And we were able to use those funds to really fund the development of Opnet, which is why we were able to do this, have a team, do all the development for this stuff without requiring some sort of gas token for these other investors to get their money out. And I will even state on that note that the people who did invest bought OTC at actually a higher price than the majority of people who hold Moto bought at. So, you know, they're just players in the game, just like everybody else. And yeah, so that's sort of how we were able to do this. Again, like we can't sit around and be like, well, we had the solution and no one else had the guts to build this without raising any capital. The reason why we were able to do that is because we had this token already that we were able to raise a little bit of capital with. So yeah, so that is basically, I mean, that's pretty much the full thing. I mean, what we really, really want to see is a number of different apps. And again, like Danny said, we subscribe to this fat app thesis. And it's like the way I think of it is if the internet had a stock, right, where if you could own a piece of the internet itself, and you could speculate on the value of the internet, then the value of the internet would be capped at whatever the value of that stock would be, right? And because of that, there could really never be an application or a website or a company that came around and exceeded the market cap of the internet stock. And because of that, again, because that doesn't exist like that, there's a limitless amount of market cap for applications that are built on the internet because there is no value to the internet. The internet is simultaneously valueless and the most valuable thing in the entire world, and no one can speculate on it. The applications that are built on it are really what accrue all the value. And since Bitcoin is already this giant store of value, it's already this giant wealth of liquidity, it's already the fattest protocol that exists. We need to build something like the internet for Bitcoin to bring this level of programmability to it. And if we're going to do that, we have to build it in a way that's true and native to Bitcoin and as best as we possibly can, right? Of course, there's still this element to Opnet that is the VM for Opnet, the indexer, it still lives off chain, just like the ordinal client does. If we ever wanted that to be implemented inside of Bitcoin, we'd obviously have to get a bit passed. But we don't see really a huge reason to push for that. I think pushing for a BIP is somewhat of a futile endeavor.
Until you have adoption or something. Like, I think the problem with Opcat is it's not like Casey said it. It's like Udi said it, and Udi's just some guy who's involved with ordinals. Like, right. if something came out of the gate that was like, here's a new protocol, like if Cat VM launched and they had some functionalities that were turned off, and the goal of Cat VM was we want to push for these things to be turned on so we can do these things, that would be great. But it's kind of like this, we need Opcat to happen or else we can never have Cat VM. That's like the way that everybody sees it right now. And so our take is, why not just kind of, instead of sitting around waiting for the Bitcoin devs to come to consensus, because that's you're gonna die from waiting for so long.
It's not gonna happen. Yeah, it's not gonna happen.
It's not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen anytime soon for sure. So instead of waiting around, we're like, let's make the best thing with the tools that are available, and then obviously there are things that could be changed to Bitcoin to make it better, because Bitcoin is not made with the intentions to do any of this stuff, let alone ordinals.
Right.
So, but get adoption first and then push for some kind of change.
Do you guys have any adversity to this? Have you guys faced anyone in the space saying, "Hey, you guys shouldn't be doing this," or opposing what you guys are trying to do?
Not like you shouldn't be doing this. No, not really at all. I think that, I mean, we went to Bitcoin Nashville just recently, and it was kind of funny because a majority of the people there were like Bitcoin miners. A majority of the people in the West are still very much so Bitcoin miners, versus we were at Bitcoin Asia as well. Everybody was talking about L2s, ordinals, runes, all these types of things. So I think, a majority of the people that we talked to are either going to be like, ordinals and everything playing on Bitcoin is cool and okay, or they're going to be hard, stanced against it. But I think that group of people is shrinking
I also
pretty quickly.
The unique positioning of Opnet versus ordinals are, and there's always going to be certain detractors, of course, like people who are unaware of the limitations. We experienced this last year when we were coming around talking about the limitations of BRC20. Way back then, no one wanted to hear about the limitations of BRC20. Everyone was like, BRC20 is perfect. It's going to be great. There's going to be all this stuff built on it. Well, fast forward a year, all of a sudden it's common consensus that BRC20 needs an upgrade. BRC20 needs to change. BRC20 is never going to be able to be what people want it to be, blah, blah, blah. Like, you even have the founder of BRC20 trying to work on some sort of programmable solution that I don't think he really has a good grasp on what he's trying to do with that, but he at least is acknowledging it, right? But back then, there was a ton of pushback from BRC20 holders, and we are experiencing just a little bit of pushback from people who hold runes, etc., who still don't understand the limitations of runes, even though the founder himself says that it's never going to be programmable and he never wants it to be programmable, etc. But some people walk through the world like this. Some people walk through the world with open ears. Either way, the market will inevitably do its thing. And then I think that the unique positioning of Opnet versus something like ordinals are exclusively for JPEG. So there's no utility for people who hold Bitcoin who are not trying to speculate on something like NFTs. So a lot of those people view ordinals like a scam, because you could you could definitely make an argument that NFTs have no good use. I mean, that's not what I particularly subscribe to, but that's definitely an argument that can be made. And if you subscribe to that philosophy, absolutely, ordinals are just a scam. So, but the beauty of Opnet is that you can deploy applications that directly benefit holders of Bitcoin in every way. So, like, for example, a lending protocol or like a stablecoin protocol. So, a Bitcoin issued stablecoin should be kind of a no-brainer. But there's just no easy way to issue something like that right now until Opnet comes around. So Opnet comes around, now you can easily issue a Bitcoin issued stablecoin. You could issue a Bitcoin backed stablecoin. There's a million different ways you can construct a stablecoin. And I think we'll see a number of different stablecoins pop up that are constructed in various ways that offer different advantages for using them. And I think there will be dominant players in that game that start to emerge. There's also lending protocols or perp dexes, right? There are ways that people can natively, without having to leave the Bitcoin blockchain, take out loans against their Bitcoin in like a stable asset and maybe either leverage themselves up or at least de-risk from holding Bitcoin without having to move to Ethereum to get some sort of yield or move to a centralized exchange and compromise on your morals to some degree, just to be able to extract a little bit of value from the currency that you hold. So we're trying to bring these common sense sort of things that really provide a lot of value to Bitcoiners, that I think there will still, of course, be some amount of pushback from people who think that Bitcoin is this should be this money and no one should do anything besides what it is meant to do. But I mean, of course, to those people, they're never going to use anything that really benefits them. And also, again, my personal opinion on that subject is that Bitcoin is in its current format really not made to do what it was originally set out to do. So you're kind of holding on to this narrative that has been floating around,
It's cringe. It's cringe and gay. There's no other way to say it.
Well, what the only store of value narrative?
Well,
Right.
just to think that Bitcoin today is reminiscent of Bitcoin in 2008 at all. Like it has been turned into digital gold like throughout the past two cycles, and now it's being turned into a different thing, and people are like freaking out. The biggest stance that we hear is like it's supposed to be the most, but it's just money. That's it. It's just supposed to be money, and it's like Bitcoin took 15 years to do 1 billion transactions. That is 1/8 of the people on the planet. It's not like a thing to be very proud of that it took 15 years to do one transaction for every 8th person on the entire planet and sell it as like the future of money. It's something else. I think Bitcoin is like this is why it actually is decentralized, because it is kind of free to describe and define. It isn't like Ethereum is very clearly a smart contracting blockchain. Bitcoin is like used to be cash, then it turned into gold, and now people are trying to use it for like storage. It's constantly changing.
Right.
And
Is it this ultimate ledger, this data availability layer? It's sort of yet to be seen. And of course, given the outcome of the block wars and the current construction of Bitcoin, again, it's like as Bitcoin's definition has sort of evolved from the original white paper, I think that that evolution hasn't seen its final form, and we want to, if we can in any way, help guide that evolution towards something that we see to be more long-term sustainable. Again, if people are using Bitcoin on a day-to-day basis for transactions, for applications like DeFi applications, and kind of any number of applications that have programmability, then there's going to be high demand for Bitcoin transactions, which will inevitably keep fees somewhat high so that miners can have a profitable model. Because again, I mean, we're looking at Bitcoin sort of hitting a wall at a certain point here in the next couple cycles, next couple halving cycles, unless Bitcoin continues to double in price. Miners.
Well, it depends, because if it is gold, then it can be this like this store of value thing. But gold doesn't double in price every 4 years because there's half the supply of it. So it's like it's not really it's comparable to so many different things. There's like people make insane analogies with Bitcoin. People get like religious about it, but it's because it is still undefined as to like what it really is. Also, it didn't have, until really ordinals happened, it didn't have users. Like it just, most of the people in Bitcoin pre-ordinals were miners, or you just held Bitcoin like that. Those were really like an enthusiast or an investor, basically. And then
Right.
ordinals came along, and all of a sudden now people are using this chain. Like literally pre-ordinals, there were like 100 to 200 transactions per block on Bitcoin on average throughout years. Like it wasn't a very used chain at all. It was mostly traded off chain because you couldn't trade it on chain. So yeah, now there's users on Bitcoin, and the users are like conflicting with the holders and the developers, but the miners are kind of aligned with this vision of the users because they're making more money than ever on Bitcoin fees, and it's a great way to offset the amount they're going to lose from the halving. So it's like suddenly this third party of people have entered into Bitcoin, which is hilarious because again, all Bitcoin miners like they shill Bitcoin, or sorry, Bitcoin maxis shill Bitcoin as being like this thing for everybody, for the average guy, right? And so then the average guy comes into their space and they're like, no, you don't belong here. This is not, you don't agree with the things that we think. This is our religion. This is not your religion. So it's just this like this kind of snap to reality where Bitcoin is an undefined thing that is very new to us still. It's 15 years old, and really the masses only adopted the last couple of cycles. So we could see some real big changes. Also, like there are versions of Bitcoin that are more like what the original tech idea of Bitcoin is. Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin SV, they're Bitcoin Gold. There's like a bunch of Bitcoin forks that are cheaper and faster and have, some of them have bigger block sizes and shorter block times, all these things. But for some reason, this one is the one that everybody has decided to put their money and time into. So we've got to figure it out. That's the only choice.
So you guys brought a concept with this emerging of Opnet, and the concept is slowfi. And one of you guys tweeted that you guys foresee a virtue in having a slowfi where you compare DeFi in a fast-moving chain versus slowfi, bringing in a different type of user to a decentralized finance ecosystem. Could you guys please explain that?
Yes. So there are two clear examples to draw this to. There's like the crypto native examples, and then there's the real world analogies with slowfi. Crypto native is, look at the best Ponzi's that happened in the DeFi market during the last cycle. All of them, Olympus DAO, Spell, all of these different types of things that ran up for 6 months and then kind of crashed. The ones that performed the best were the ones that had either lockup periods or slow emission, kind of more stable rates than, say Sushi Swap, where it was, 100,000% APY and then went from $10 to 10 cents. So slow Ponzi's seem to have worked on even Ethereum. And you can see that still in play today when you look at things like Solana. Like Solana is an extremely high transaction per second blockchain, upwards of 100,000 transactions per second. And so it's really great for the consumer, the average person, for retail to like trade meme coins on and have a very flawless experience. But if I'm going to build a staking DeFi platform, right? If every second 100,000 users can hit the claim or the unstake button and then sell right away, my Ponzi is going to fall apart very, very quickly. Because everybody, it doesn't allow for the time it takes for like the bootstrapping period and then people to realize their profits. It's too quick for that. So, and you can even draw that example into the real world as well. If you look at real estate market or trying to buy like physical gold or making a wire transfer, it takes 3 to 5 days to make a wire transfer to this day. So money moving slowly is not like a negative, necessarily a negative experience. It just, no one's really done a specifically intended slow DeFi environment. It's always been on these very high. You can even look at when they passed EIP 1559 was near the top of the bull market. And that was exactly where ETH got cheaper and faster to use. Before that, when NFTs cost, 2 ETH and gas just to mint, the money kept flowing and flowing because games could play out longer and slower. Which allowed them to like move with the market faster. So if you look at Bitcoin's like a pretty extreme example because block times are 10 to 15 minutes and the maximum amount of transactions you can have is 6,000 to 8,000 transactions per block. So, if there's 100,000 people playing a bunch of different DeFi games, only 6,000 people can do one thing every 15 minutes. That's pretty that's pretty slow. Slowfi is really in act there. So I think that like an Ohm fork, things like Aave, especially lending protocols where you don't really have to manage your position every single 10, 15 seconds. I think those will have a really, really high, a very sticky amount of liquidity to grow on Bitcoin layer one.
Nice. Right
Yeah,
on.
it seems to me that again, Bitcoin was kind of made in a lot of ways in its construction to be the home for some of these types of things. Now, like if you look at super high throughput blockchains like Solana, for example, what's the only thing that thrives on Solana?
Meme
Meme
coins.
Bitcoins, right? And they pump really fast and they dump really fast. And there's not a lot of super sticky liquidity in that ecosystem because money moves. Money moves very, very quickly. And especially if you're trying to create something that's more long-term sustainable, again, I think that people sometimes have a little bit of a bad taste in their mouth when it comes to DeFi because all they remember is the big crashes and everything crashes fast. But if you take that speed element away from things, again, like the best Ponzi schemes, and I'm not saying that everything that launches should be a Ponzi scheme, but the best Ponzi schemes are extended over a very long period of time, and Ponzi schemes benefit from people not rushing. Okay, I mean, take Ponzi schemes out of the equation. Look at banking, right? Like you can't, if everybody who held money in a bank was able to instantly access their money the moment they felt any sort of fear or doubt, the entire banking system would collapse. I mean, banks only have what 10% of the money that on hand at
On
any
hand, yeah.
time. So again, like a slower environment actually might be really, really good for some of these types of things. Again, especially these DeFi type applications that somewhat mimic the TradFi world. Again, meme coins I think will have their run. Obviously, speed was no impact or no factor on meme coins for when it came to Ordi. So I think there will be sort of analogous types of tokens that are launched, and unlike Ordi, you can trade them liquidly on dexes, which is obviously going to be a huge benefit to the shitcoin game. But if you're not interested in those types of things and you think that type of stuff is irresponsible, you don't like to gamble like that, but you do want a way to in a very low risk or low speculation way earn some sort of yield on your Bitcoin, use your Bitcoin in a way that gets you some sort of stable value. That's where I really think this slowfi concept is gonna be maximized.
So for all other assets that live in different protocols within BTC, are you guys working on giving them a home within Opnet? How's
Well,
that
they
gonna work?
can bridge in like runes can bridge to Solana, BRC20s can bridge to Solana. I think you can even bridge some runes and BRC20s back and forth to each other, which is kind of funny. But it'll work the same concept where you could have a wrapped version of Ordi or a wrapped version of Dog Go to Moon and have that on MotoSwap as an OP20 token. But just based on the way that the indexers work, they're like very closed. It's like BlackBerry and iPhone and Android. Like you can't just build. They're all connected to cell networks, but they're like very, very different types of applications. They're kind of bound to their own system. So it's going to be difficult to like get for anybody. I mean, I know of Arch Network that's trying to build for the existing assets, and there's Glitter, and there's a couple other ones that are trying to build for like runes and BRC20s that currently exist. But it's just a difficult time trying to get the existing state of a protocol to now all of a sudden have a new. This is why we're like moving away from CBRC20 and just importing everything as new tokens. We're just going to airdrop them on Opnet, because if we were to try and like rework the CBRC20 backend to not totally break with an entire new upgrade that's basically a new thing, it's just a total nightmare. So there will be bridging for people to do it, or you can migrate your token as well. Like that's what people did from BRC20 to runes. Is they would, there were BRC20 communities like the Pups token or Wizard or all these types of things. And then when runes came out, they just airdropped the new token to everybody else. So the Pups token still exists, but there's a rune version of it now as well. So people could do that 100% very, very easily.
We foresee a few different options. Yeah, like Danny said. One is just airdrop an OP20, which is the token standard for Opnet. You can airdrop an OP20 version of any existing asset to all of the holders in actually a really, really cheap way because we're using smart contracts, which takes away a lot of the cost of airdropping stuff on this network specifically. So that's one option. It's a great option. That's probably a really low friction option. Second option would be burning your current asset and then issuing a new version of it one-to-one on using Opnet. So that would be maybe a higher friction option, I would say. And the third option would really be bridging. And that is, in my opinion, interoperability, especially now that we're introducing this huge amount of programmability with Opnet, with Bitcoin. I think there's a lot of opportunity for applications to come around that offer interoperability between these meta protocols. Because I think there's going to be a lot of financial opportunity for those who are active in this space, who hold BRC20s, who hold runes. And if you either can't sell them or aren't interested in selling them, or you want to do more with those assets, I think there's interoperability between meta protocols. I think is going to be a high value application that should pop up over the course of the next couple of months. We could also theoretically build it ourselves, but we also don't want to take up too much market share and dominate.
We could theoretically build everything on this. Like, that's the problem. Yeah, there's going to be a need for DEX tools. There's going to, we built a block explorer because that's op scan. It feels like a pretty core thing to need. But yeah, we don't want to get our hands in too many cookie jars. We want to focus on making Opnet and MotoSwap like really, really, really good. And
we have enough to manage continually upgrading Opnet and its functionality and continually managing our own application that's sort of where our bets are placed. So we have to make sure that our application is a great application that offers a great user experience, or else, again, another application that's a DEX can come around and either fork our code or create a better version if we fail in any way. And so again, there's nothing stopping anyone from doing that, which means that we have to focus a little bit of our energy on making sure our application is a top tier application.
Right on. That's so cool. So I hear of all these communities propping up, like Modo for MotoSwap and also Unga. So these coins, these tokens, where do they live? Where can people go buy them? Where can they go speculate on them? Like,
now they're CBRC20. They're
CBRC20
CBRC20 tokens. Yeah, which is like again, it's like a fork of BRC20. There's some small marketplaces, one's called SatsX, and the other one is called Ordinal Novice. So you can buy those tokens on there, but they work on your Unisat wallet, on Xverse wallet, anything like that still.
Absolutely, yeah. So you can go and speculate on those assets as well. Obviously, those are all going to be airdropped. So they'll be migrated using that first method I talked about, where we're just going to airdrop all of the holders one-to-one, and they'll still have the CBRC20 version, but you'll also have the Opnet version, which again will be the version that you can use for all sorts of stuff. So there will likely be a chance that most of those assets will be somewhat valueless after Opnet comes live to mainnet. But right now, before mainnet is live, you can definitely speculate on those assets by buying them on SatsX or Ordinal Novice.
So give us some alpha, guys. What is it that other people don't know that you guys are yet to share with others?
Well,
there's gotta be something.
I'll put it this way, without revealing too much, right? One big concept that we want to really flex within the Bitcoin space is the ability to airdrop tokens for a far, far, far cheaper cost than any other meta protocol that exists. So basically, most, if not all, other meta protocols on Bitcoin right now are what's called UTXO-based meta protocols. So if I want to move an asset and assign new ownership of like a BRC20 token or a Runes token or a TAP token or whatever, I have to make a Bitcoin transaction that sends Bitcoin from address A to address B, and now address B is the owner of that token. Like, my token ownership is assigned through a chunk of Bitcoin moving from place to place. So when you want to airdrop tokens, you have to airdrop single transfers to every single address that you want to make. You can't just do like, boom, I want to make airdrop to all these addresses and then do it in a very cheap way. You have to pay for the cost of every single individual address to be posted on chain and or to send like an individual transaction. So the cost of that, just for example, Unisat just did a pizza airdrop where they airdropped a 5-ticker BRC20 to like 200,000 wallets, and it cost them $1.6 million in Bitcoin fees alone. Yeah, it was insanely expensive to airdrop 200. Yeah. So it's a very like untouchable thing for the average developer. You have to be a massive company if you want to flex this airdrop to the massive community. Even Dog Go to Moon by Leonidas, a Rune token, cost just about $500,000 to send to 75,000 people. So
the community funded that too. So not everybody has Binance backing them up like Unisat does to have $1.5 million to throw around to distribute a token. Not everybody has 200,000 Twitter followers to raise $500,000 to airdrop to a couple hundred or 75,000 wallets. Like, if you want to get a token out to a lot of people, the barrier to entry is in the. You have to be
rich. You have to be rich. You can't be. Yeah. You have to be rich, and you have to be willing to like put up hundreds of thousands of dollars just to get your token to launch to people. And then there's no liquidity for it even. So you better hope that people want to buy it on the secondary market. There was a token called Epic on Runes that paid $2 million to buy the Epic Sat, and then they airdropped it to 80,000 people, cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the token just tanked because it just didn't have any hype on it. Yeah.
Wow. And so you can't do anything with these assets. So you have Dog Go to Moon. Now what? Pray Binance lists it? I mean, everyone in the world is praying Binance lists their token. That doesn't make Binance list your token just because you tweet a lot.
The point of bringing up the airdrop is that on Opnet, you can do literally airdrops that exist just like on any other smart contract platform. Like when if you got the ENS airdrop, or you got the Blur airdrop, or you got the Uni token airdrop, none of those companies paid a bunch of money to send like the token to all their users, right? Like they deployed a smart contract that had what's called a Merkle tree, which is like a big algorithm that compresses a bunch of addresses into a very, very cheap way to put it on chain. And so they just put a smart contract up that had, a couple 100,000 wallets that are eligible for this amount of token. And then whenever the user wants to, they can just go and click the button and claim the tokens. If it's not worth it for them to, like, the fees are high, they can just wait, and that's fine. They can claim whatever they want. So on Opnet, you can have airdrops for hundreds of thousands of wallets that cost you a very, very, like, less than $1,000 type cheap amount of money. Yes.
And how do you achieve that? How is it that you achieve that? What mechanism?
It's by having a smart contract that has this Merkle tree root of all of these. Basically,
that's badass, man. Okay, now I get it. Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
because people want to do this on Bitcoin. People want to create community. They want to incentivize people with tokenomics.
It should also it shouldn't be $1 million to do this, because again, like, who gets to play this game now? Who gets to launch tokens? Unisat gets to launch tokens, and Giga influencers get to launch tokens. That's the only people who launch successful tokens. Like, that's it. Because the barrier to entry is so high. And so, like Danny was about to say.
So if only there was a way to airdrop all of the active users in the Bitcoin space a token and unify them within a token standard, and then give them games to play. It's like giving everybody a casino chip, and then
I see where you're going.
Now So
how do we jump in, guys? Let's play with this. Let's do it. I want to do that.
There will be alpha. You could do it yourself, but what Danny's sort of alluding to is that we have a little bit of a plan, just because there is no gas token, there's no VC token. We could theoretically, not saying we're gonna do this, but we could theoretically fairly distribute a token that might not have any inherent value, but we could use that as a kind of first use case token that just to show off, hey, here is what you could do with these assets.
And then you could even on MotoSwap have liquidity mining for that token that incentivizes people to put liquidity. So now there's a market for that token, and now MotoSwap has a bunch of TVL, and it could be a really cool idea.
Right. The way we see it is that there shouldn't be any punishment for other people for not using Opnet. In fact, in my opinion, our goal is to try and onboard as many people as possible to using Opnet, and just to show them a better user experience, because a lot of people who are in the Bitcoin space now didn't play with Ethereum. A lot of people who are in the Bitcoin space now are either coming from just the Bitcoin world or coming into Bitcoin for the first time. Actually, or coming to crypto for the first time is an experience we see with a lot of these people who are active in the Bitcoin space. Not a lot of people are ETH native or native to blockchains that have more programmability. So giving people the opportunity without them even having really to do anything is sort of an important part in our opinion in our go-to-market and our onboarding strategy, because we don't want to be here sitting here and saying everything else sucks, our thing's the best, come over here and use it or die. Like, that's not really our position at all. Our position is Bitcoin is this land of freedom where no one can tell us what to do. And because of that, we built an awesome meta protocol that allows for anyone to deploy any smart contract onto the Bitcoin blockchain and build any application they want. We've built a lot of functionality out natively, and we just want to be able to flex that functionality for people and show, hey, there's a lot that you can do with these assets, and the user experience and the dev experience are both probably 1,000 times better than any existing meta protocol. And on top of that, in terms of alpha, there's going to be a lot of projects that are going to start building over the course of the next month. I mean, we just released public testnet today. We already have a number of projects. I would put it between 5 and 10 projects that are already currently in development, utilizing Opnet, making Bitcoin layer 1 applications, whether it is a project called Stash, whether it is a meme coin community like Unga, whether it is OP Fund, which is like a pump fund liquidity bootstrapping platform to really make the barrier to entry for launching tokens basically zero. I mean, you launch a token on there. If people like it, they basically raise money there. As soon as it hits a certain threshold of liquidity, it gets automatically deployed to MotoSwap, where you can now trade it.
The LP's burned.
The LP gets burned. So there's already early projects, and these are projects that came out of the Moto community, that came out of the community that's kind of surrounds the Moto community. And I think we'll start to see a number of projects emerge. We just announced and put the public testnet out today. So we've already seen a lot of people start to throw out ideas. Ooh, I can build the first Aave fork on Bitcoin. I could do lending. I could do this. I could do that. I could make my stablecoin protocol like this. I could do my stablecoin protocol like that. So there's going to be a lot of stuff that happens. Again, obviously, Danny and I are pretty involved with the NUSD community. We're doing our best to get those guys to start issuing NUSD as an OP20 token, because it literally just makes sense for them to do.
And BAMP. We need to get the BAMP token as an OP20, so that way people can click the claim button and actually claim their token, and they can stake their BAMP token and get more BAMP token. They can do liquidity mining with BAMP and NUSD as a pair.
They could use it as a governance token as well. Again, like, these are things you can't do with existing Bitcoin assets. You can't use Bitcoin assets as governance tokens because there's no way to use. There's no smart contracts. There's no way to actually use your tokens to vote on stuff. So there's no point of having
like a Twitter poll. You might as well run a Twitter poll for your fucking decisions.
Right. So with Opnet, you're able to make like DAOs, for example, whether it's investment DAOs, whether it's DAOs like MakerDAO, whether it's I mean, there's a number of the Curve, obviously. Like, you can launch a protocol and have a token for it, and the token can actually govern that protocol in a way that actually makes sense. And so, yeah, I mean, again, a lot of the stuff we're talking about to someone who's familiar with using something like Ethereum is like, oh, duh, obviously, why doesn't this stuff exist? But for those who have languished in this Bitcoin space, like we have, just kind of waiting for something that makes sense to happen, we're just trying to bring that to the table and say, hey, this is our ideal protocol design. We truly believe that this is the ideal Bitcoin layer 1 meta protocol that just strictly upgrades Bitcoin's functionality to be able to do a lot more stuff. And I mean, again, we really hope people like it. There's going to be a lot of people who build, so there's going to be a lot of tokens that launch. And for those alpha hunters, stay active in the community, stay active in the Opnet Discord or Opnet Telegram, and you'll start to see these early projects start to either bootstrap, whether you can get into early seed rounds, you can get early allocations. I would recommend, if you're a project and you start to launch a token, have a free mint for that token so you can fairly distribute it. Do airdrops to existing communities. I think this is going to be a meta that we're going to try and cultivate so that all the early participants kind of benefit.
Dude, that is awesome. Yeah, you guys stepping in first really kind of do away with the need for Opcat. What would be, okay, if once you guys launch, what would be the need for an Opcat?
Well,
just to have it
Opcat,
at the
it's kind of unknown, to be honest with you. Like
Yeah.
Opcat allows for the way that I describe it is like, you know, on Bitcoin normally, if you want to store the values 1, 2, 3, 4 in a script, like Porsche script contract, right? You have to store it as 1 and then 2 and then 3 and then 4. And Opcat allows you to basically combine all of those values into one line of 1, 2, 3, 4. So that, like, to any normal person doesn't sound like a really big idea or like a big upgrade, but that's all it does. And for programming, that just basically allows you to, like, it technically allows for script to be viewed as a Turing complete programming language. So, but it's still not, it's like saying that, oh my God, I don't even know what an example of this is. It's like saying that English is now able to be written as Chinese. Like, yes, you can write the phonetic spelling of Chinese in English if you really wanted to, but it's not going to be the thing that people really want to speak or read Chinese in. They want to do it in Chinese, right? So I would describe trying to turn like script, which is specifically made not to be a Turing complete. It's not made to be like a financial tooling language. It's just supposed to do very basic mathematical functions. You can do hash locked time things and all this sort of stuff. It's just unknown what it's going to be able to do. So there are no parts of Opcat that take away from what we do with Opnet, where it's like a threat to what we're doing at all. At the end of the day, our dev team is fucking very, very cool, and they just want to do cool stuff. So if they can make it cooler by including Opcat, then they most definitely will.
Right.
But it's not a requirement for us. Yeah.
And that's going to be very far down the line. Again, we know how BIPs work. No amount of posting on Twitter is going to make the Bitcoin core devs move faster. And those guys move at the pace they move. And there's still disagreement amongst the Bitcoin core devs who make the decisions on these things about whether they even want it in the first place. So if it does happen, we'll see. Again, like, to my understanding, I think the biggest use case is not that it'll bring this type of smart contract functionality that everyone is like dreaming of or talking about, because it just simply doesn't do that.
Opnet does though, right?
Opnet absolutely does.
Opnet does, yeah.
Yeah, but Opcat does not. Again, an Opcat different. We named Opnet Opnet because it's like Bitcoin is made up of opcodes, right? So that's sort of like a tongue-in-cheek name.
Also, Opcat probably won't get passed this year, and it will probably fall, away into the forgotten if that doesn't happen. Right. And so the term op something is already in people's minds. So right. 3 letters, Opnet, Opcat.
Opcat is a Bitcoin opcode.
Yeah.
Opnet is not a Bitcoin opcode. Opnet is like it's named, it's like ordinals, right? Where it's just a name.
Orange pill net, Yeah.
Yeah, that way, that's sort of like the real joke, is that it's orange pill net, which allows you you take the orange pill, allows you to do all this stuff. Yeah, I mean, to my knowledge, the biggest bullish, the thing that Opcat is most bullish for is layer 2s, because it allows you to make a truer layer 2, because pretty much all the layer 2 solutions right now are all just side chains. They're not actually layer 2s at all. They're just basically completely separate blockchains that really don't have anything to do with Bitcoin at all.
Which is like, wait a minute, why not just work on layer 1?
Hey, again, the real reason why is because if you want to get funding for a project, you got to make your own token. What's the easiest way to raise money? Start your own blockchain and have a
fork arbitrarily.
Exactly. Do what a million other L2 grifts have done, and not to say every L2 is a grift, but there's a lot of grift in that world, because there's probably 70 L2s that say they're Bitcoin L2s that are launching over the course of the next year or two. And I would say pretty much none of them are really true to Bitcoin. Let's just quickly talk about
that's why Fractal is cool though. Yeah.
Well, before Fractal, like, talk about something like Babylon, for example. Babylon's entire concept, they raised $70 million on this, by the way. So if you want to know why people do this, they raised $70 million. And the idea is you give them your private key, and they issue you a new version of Bitcoin on their network. And if you do bad stuff with that Bitcoin, they take your Bitcoin off the main chain because you gave them your private key. So that's like the peak of Bitcoin L2 innovation in terms of what VCs are funding. They raised 70 mil off of
their whole bit was that multi-sigs are bad. And that's tried, and we've tried that. That didn't work. So we're going to not use multi-sigs. We're going to use a single key, but you just share that key with us. So it's, I mean, even worse than a multi-sig.
It's horrible. It's an
Wow.
absolutely crazy idea. It's insane that anyone funded them. I don't see that gaining much adoption. Again, from what I understand, talking to VCs, that there's a lot of maybe institutional money that might move to something like that, which is why. But again, I think a lot of, and this is a sentiment from a lot of VCs that are very, very tapped into this. A lot of VCs are just throwing money at the wall because they're bullish on Bitcoin, and anything that says Bitcoin and layer anything, they're just funding. And they don't really do a lot of due diligence. And a lot of these L2s that are coming out are basically just when you're picking teams on a baseball field, you do this and this and this and this on the bat, and then whoever sticks their hand on the top gets to pick first or whatever. That's pretty much what these L2s are in terms of funding, right? They'll do like 5 or 10 different rounds of fundraising. The first VC is here at a $10 million valuation. The last VC is in at a $2 billion valuation. At that point, before we even get to mainnet, the first VC is already out of the game. So
he's selling it to people higher. Like, yeah.
They're just selling it to each other. But Bitcoiners specifically are much smarter than that. And Bitcoiners are, I mean, this is what I say to anyone who talks about this stuff, is like, okay, you have this genius L2 Bitcoin solution that's really a totally separate blockchain. What makes you think you're going to convince the Bitcoiner who never moved to Ethereum, who thinks that Ethereum is a Bitcoin layer 2? I mean, a lot of people in the Bitcoin world say, well, ETH is just an L2 of Bitcoin, or it's just a side chain, right? Which there's an argument to be made for that as well. But like,
well, in the model that all these L2s are built on, people are totally right. Like, wrap Bitcoin by BitGo exists, and there's 10 to 12 billion dollars of Bitcoin there. I don't believe they've ever been hacked. It works super well, and the yield during the last DeFi cycle on wrap Bitcoin and like lending protocols and things, it was pretty high. Like, it was multiple percent that you could get just by putting your Bitcoin up.
Anyone who would have done that has already done it. Anyone who's on Bitcoin right now,
and that's 1%. About 1% of Bitcoin is willing to move off of Bitcoin to get access to yield for, exposure on holding Bitcoin as well. It's 10 to 12 bill. That's just about 1%. So what's the percentage of Bitcoin that is willing to stay on Bitcoin? Already it's 99%. What if, the yield switch was turned on their own home ground? You've got 99% of Bitcoin already ready. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, there is no world in my mind where any vast amount of liquidity moves from Bitcoin layer 1 to any Bitcoin sidechain or any Bitcoin
any of them. Yeah.
No shot. Yeah. Absolutely not. You have to build it on Bitcoin layer 1. You have to do it native to Bitcoin, because again, these are the types of people who would never move off Bitcoin for any reason except for Tether. Right? Everyone on Bitcoin layer 1 who just wants to stay there. The only compromise they'll pretty much ever make on this stuff is, I like Tether because Tether is a good stable coin.
Well, that's not even why. It's Tether is the only stable coin I can use because there is no other option. Like I have to use, if I'm a Bitcoin whale and I'm Michael Saylor and I want to have a party with my billionaire friends and I want to rent a yacht and I want to buy lobsters for everybody, I need to use US dollars to pay for that. I can't use Bitcoin right now. So I'm going to, if I'm, exposed to Bitcoin, I want to cash that out, I'm going to use an ERC20 based stablecoin because that's the only option. Versus, with Opnet, Tether or USDC, literally anybody, the same concept as like NUSD, right? Anyone can issue stablecoins on Bitcoin now, which inherently is going to build the TVL of Bitcoin as a whole. So if Tether issued the exact same version of Tether, but they issued it on ERC20 and they issued it on OP20, right? Probably a lot of Bitcoiners, if the liquidity is there for them to use the OP20 version of it, they would use it because it's a Bitcoin native stablecoin, even though it's still Tether. So like a Bitcoin native stablecoin doesn't have to be backed by Bitcoin. It just has to be issued on Bitcoin. And there's literally $1 trillion+ of market interest in that.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. And you don't have to leave the blockchain. Woohoo! Like that is just like a dream come true. So aside from, okay, so everyone, when ordinals got started, the first thing that came to everyone's mind was, oh man, so they were looking at me and they thought I was crazy because I was predicting this. I was predicting, guys, we're gonna have smart contracts before you know it. And everyone thought I was crazy. Okay, so what's the next hurdle? Now that smart contracts are a reality on BTC on layer 1, what's the next crazy idea that could very well be possible in the future?
I think this is where we really talk about Fractal. I mean, okay, this is just before we even really get into that. So excellent question. And I think this is where scaling conversations are actually appropriate because like Danny said earlier in the interview, there haven't been users on the Bitcoin network really until ordinals. There haven't been a lot of users. And sorry, I moved my computer to charge it. Sorry. Basically, there haven't been users on the Bitcoin network, and when you have the scaling conversation, there needs to be users that you're catering to. So this is what I find a little bit funny, and oh boy, do I wish I was around during this time. But I'm also kind of glad I wasn't around for the block size wars because I probably would have been ripping my hair out because people are talking about scaling solutions. And people are coming up with a million different scaling solutions for users that don't exist, right? These users don't exist. So you have to have a lot of users, in my opinion, in order to and have a lot of high demand for transactions on the layer one for scaling solutions to really start being talked about. And so I think there's a number of things. There's obviously a core change to Bitcoin that allows for Bitcoin to scale. I think that would obviously be everyone's dream, especially when we get down to there's a ton of activity in terms of these smart contracts. If every block is full of transactions, it will definitely put the pressure on Bitcoin core devs to think of new scaling solutions. Aside from that, that's sort of like a far out dream. Aside from that, I would say, yes, something like Fractal Bitcoin is going to be, and now you actually really have demand for L2s, and these L2s can be crafted around the needs of L1. And then again, Danny, I'll pass it off to you to really talk about Fractal.
Well, Fractal's sick. Yeah, Fractal's really cool. Not even because it's anything necessarily very new, but it's a really cool combination of I would describe it like the effect that Unisat had with BRC20s, where they didn't like invent any new kind of blockchain or any new technology. They just kind of organized and presented a really good user experience for an existing thing using existing technologies, which was BRC20, right? So Fractal is this idea of merge mining a chain with Bitcoin, which means that basically every handful, I believe for them it's every 3 blocks, they mine 2 of their own blocks, and then 1 block is mined by Bitcoin miners. So Bitcoin miners can get, if they turn on the switch to mine Fractal as well, they can get a portion of the Fractal Bitcoin token, which is not just like a wrap version of Bitcoin. It's their own token completely. And so basically what they did is they forked Bitcoin, added this merge mine concept, and then because it's their own thing, they were like, fuck it, let's turn on Opcat. Let's make the blocks bigger, and then let's make the block size or block time be a little bit faster. So you can do 3 blocks every 1 Bitcoin block, essentially. Again, none of this stuff is really new. People have been doing merge mining since 2013. People have been, forking Bitcoin and doing their own stuff since basically Bitcoin's inception. But Unisat has a history of really making the user experience feel like, holy shit, this is the new thing. This makes so much sense. So if there's going to be like a Bitcoin L2, basically everybody, like we talked about earlier, has just done. You make a fucking multi-sig, you put your Bitcoin in it, and now you fork Arbitrum, and Bitcoin is your gas token. It's like a totally not tied to Bitcoin thing at all. Fractal, I believe, will really feel to the user like, oh my God, I'm using a faster and a cheaper version of Bitcoin that's tied to Bitcoin a little bit. And so this feels just like Arbitrum or like Optimism to ETH, but it's Fractal to Bitcoin. I'm personally really bullish. And then also Opnet, like, because it's just a Bitcoin fork, Fractal is, and it's a Bitcoin fork that includes Taproot, which is the first of its kind, as far as I'm aware. Opnet works on any Bitcoin fork, and so you can just plop it onto Fractal as well. And that'll be really cool, because if we can have...
Sorry, go ahead.
No, if we can have like an environment where... I think a lot of people, just when we talk to people about Opnet, they think that it's, of course, they're going to think it's an L2. They're going to think it's a side chain or something like that. They don't really get that it exists on other blockchains. So if we have the chance to have it on the main net where it's fast, where it's slow, but deep liquidity, and then we also have Fractal Opnet on Fractal, that'll be really nice for the user to just get affiliated with the Opnet kind of concept, which is any fork of Bitcoin can use this. This is not its own chain. It can exist anywhere, just like ordinals. Ordinals and runes, you can have them on all these different forks of Bitcoin, whether they have Taproot or not. Opnet works the exact same way.
Right. Yeah. In the same way, we can just basically, I mean, we're just plugging Opnet into Bitcoin right now, right? We're plugging it in. You got a VM that's processing all of the smart contracts and smart contract interaction that you deploy directly onto the Bitcoin blockchain. You could plug that right into Fractal and get the exact same thing, except
It's like Doggedals or the Litecoin ordinals, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, yeah, same concept.
That's awesome.
Right. Exactly. And I think that whether it is fractal Bitcoin or not that ends up being the scaling solution, I think the most important thing is that we'll see these Bitcoin scaling solutions be more catered towards users, because there's going to actually be users to build these experiences for. I think that's really the core of what Danny was saying with Unisat, is that they're really good at making this user experience. So a lot of people,
every other Bitcoin L2 has tried to fit execution ability and programmability directly into the L2. They're like, why would I just fork Bitcoin and make it faster and cheaper if it's not going to have smart contracts? Unisat like found this really unique niche where they kind of recognized that a lot of the users still don't give a shit about programmability because it's not even in any of the games yet. So if you just have a faster and cheaper version of Bitcoin that's tied to Bitcoin a little bit with the merge mining concept, and then you have all of the games that everyone's used to, you can even put BRC20 runes, tap, CBRC if people want to, Opnet obviously. That will feel to people like a Bitcoin L2 more than here's my EVM smart contract chain that uses wrap Bitcoin as a gas token. Like that to me just feels like ETH with extra steps.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a really good way to put it, Danny. ETH with extra stuff. Yeah. That's what a lot of these are. And again, like, I truly believe in my heart of hearts that the more pressure is put on Bitcoin core devs to make changes to fundamentally to Bitcoin's code to make it more long-term sustainable, that they inevitably will. I just think that there isn't, I mean, Ordinal sort of just introduced the first little ounce of pressure, and oh boy, did they resist it. Push back as best as they possibly could, and they didn't stop it. But because of the limited design of ordinals and the other meta protocols, there hasn't been this like worldwide global adoption within the crypto sphere of these Bitcoin meta protocols as they currently are. That's sort of one of our goals with Opnet. It's not so much that we're trying to burn it all down or anything like that, but we want to just push the limits of what you can do on Bitcoin L1. And there will be dominoes that naturally fall that I don't think we really even need to be a huge proponent of pushing the whatever that ends up falling into.
I mean, look at Casey. Casey hasn't, Casey's basically stayed out of all of those conversations and things are still happening. So yeah, totally agree. It doesn't need to be our place.
Right. I think there's a lot of people with a lot of great ideas on how Bitcoin should scale. Obviously, like you and your audience are BSV focused, and again, not
everyone. It's probably just me. Everyone else is all over the place. But no, I'm the only one that has been big blocker focused for sure. Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely. And look,
we can have Opnet on BSV too. That's awesome. Yeah.
That is true. And I think that, I personally, after I got past the initial FUD from everybody in the Bitcoin world about BSV and put Craig Wright completely out of my mind, I started to really understand, and not even really that, it's much more so the more I looked into Bitcoin and its original construction versus how it is now and how people are using it, I really started to understand the position of people who are interested in big blocks, because inevitably, I mean, what are we doing here to some degree, right? Like you kind of get this, like, are we just shouting into the void about this? Because we're talking about a blockchain that everyone who is a big proponent of it says, well, everyone in the world should use this on a day-to-day basis for day-to-day financial transactions. But in the same breath, we want
to keep the blocks small.
We need to keep blocks extremely small, so only 6,000 transactions can happen per block at maximum. And also fees on mainnet need to be low so everyone in the world can use it, but also only 6,000 people can make transactions within 10-minute intervals. It's like, this doesn't make sense for what people are saying it should be. And then, of course, okay, So we get to the Bitcoin is gold narrative. That maybe not. That just sounds a little bit like a Ponzi scheme to me. There's nothing guaranteeing the price goes up. And then again, in order to actually secure the network long term, the price needs to continue to double every 4 years, or else it's not going to be viable for miners. So it's
well,
like,
what happens when Bitcoin's done being mined? It's like there needs to be network fee. The only way that Bitcoin in its current design, which I'm sure it's not going to look like this in 100+ years when the last Bitcoin is mined, we'll all probably be dead by then, which is insane to think about. But if it was the current version of Bitcoin and we reached the last Bitcoin being mined, you would only have network fees that are incentivizing the miners to continue securing the chain. So there needs, like, the end goal of Bitcoin, this $1.2 trillion version of it, needs to end with some kind of usability in its end goal, like that. If that isn't part of the equation, I do personally think, maybe it's a little schizo, but I do think that the storage conversation and like the block size argument will be pretty funny and deprecated in the coming years, like probably within this halving cycle, just because like storage, think of 2008, how much 10 terabytes of servers would cost back then versus, maybe 5 years from now, it's not going to, you'll have 10 terabyte fucking, mini flash drives or mini SD cards. So I don't think that storage will really be as much of a problem as it is, which would lead the doors to the big block conversation happening again. But it definitely can't stay the same if something's got to happen.
Neither Danny or myself are like super philosophically aligned to any camp either. Like we just, again, one thing I'm not aligned with is Lightning Network. I think that is a ridiculous solution. I think that the idea that, the argument of, well, we need to keep block sizes small so a bunch of people can run Bitcoin nodes to keep the network decentralized. And the way we'll scale it is through a centralized layer 2. It's like, and only
that's like the block stream. That's the block stream.
Only
shit.
the one we like. It's like, okay, well, that's the dumbest argument. That is the number one dumbest argument. So I think that putting that argument aside, again, I think that over time, common sense will sort of win out in terms of what needs to happen with Bitcoin layer 1. Again, I don't know.
Just a funny stat about Lightning Network is, again, there's 10 to 12 billion dollars of wrapped Bitcoin in an ERC20 version of it. There is less than half a billion. There's about 400 million dollars in Lightning Network in total. So there's 20 times, 30 times more interest in wrapped Bitcoin and DeFi than there is on whatever the fuck Lightning Network is, which an entire 4-year-long bit process got passed. That's what the whole point of Taproot and TapScript was, or at least the argument for it was Lightning Network, and it just like drastically failed. I mean, it's not even an argument.
Middle of all of those arguments, man. Like,
I'm amazed that you still have your sanity, dude. Because again,
I mean, by the grace of God, I think that it's something divine that keeps my sanity going, because I have had friends that have actually left. They're amazing programmers that have just left Bitcoin and crypto altogether because they couldn't deal with the craziness. And they went on to work in AI or video games. And they have great salaries.
Well, okay, that's like
they live great lives, but it's the brain drain that was caused from the insanity, which hurts the most, because the insanity, what it really does deep down is that it demoralizes people. Mm-hmm. That's the number one, like, a source of damage. And when you really come back and you understand what has happened and what has been really going on, you realize that it's not it was never a technological problem, and it was never a technological attack per se, but rather it was more like of a psychological conditioning that happened. And it was really just in my opinion, looking back now, I see that in large part it was more of a psychological and psychological warfare. Really, that's what it was.
Completely.
Censorship, fake news, lies, promises, marketing, just
attacking people's character as well.
Attacking people's character. So it was just very dirty. And it says something to their genius, because they were able to accomplish what they did in slowing Bitcoin's growth down. to the point that I would say that we can learn something from them, in that they were very keen in understanding that human nature and human psychology can be easily manipulated, can be
Absolutely.
easily influenced. And so,
Yeah.
you know, it doesn't matter if your arguments are logical or sound, if you're on the right page with the technology, understanding the psychology of the masses is way more important. And so I think that was a big learning experience, at least for me, which I took it, and I still take it as a learning experience, really, because now I understand that technology is not enough. It's really understanding humanity from a more holistic perspective.
Well, this is like the fat protocol thesis, is that internet protocols that literally run, we're talking on Zoom right now, like the things that power everything, the communication processes we have, there is no financial incentive for what was the best. Like, simply the best protocols of the 1960s through 2000s just were the best ones. It was like this Darwinistic kind of process of HTTP and TCP and email, and those are like the three that have really stuck around, that every day everybody uses these. That only happened because there's no financial incentive for any one of those protocols to like really become adopted. Versus in crypto, the protocols themselves can be construed with psyops, basically, like marketing, and because there's financial incentive for the adoption of your protocol. So there's like way more infighting and fuckery going on with who controls what happens to Bitcoin than who controls what happens to like HTTP 30 years ago. A group of nerds decided what happened to HTTP, you know, like it's programmers that live in the middle of nowhere. It's not government services and agencies like this. Versus in crypto, the best tech has probably or better tech than whatever's in the top 100 market cap of tokens right now has probably been put out at some point. It just didn't have good enough psyops to become completely adopted. So that's like building apps on top of Bitcoin now kind of introduces this new layer of people who have a say in what matters and how the underlying protocol works, because they have financial interest in the applications built on top of it that maybe they were early to, but because they weren't early, 15 years ago in Bitcoin, they're fucked about what happens with Bitcoin now. It's kind of a reset.
We're going to see we saw the first trickling, in my opinion. It was just a little trickle of users on a day-to-day basis using the Bitcoin network with ordinals. And I think that one of the main effects of Opnet is going to be that number, in my opinion, is probably going to multiply by a factor of 10 or 100, just because the more people in crypto, aside really from people who are really deep into Bitcoin, people in all of the crypto space flow to where there's money to be made. That's why people are using Blast. That's why people even use Ethereum. That's why anyone is pretty much doing anything in this space, really, except a lot of times for Bitcoiners. So a lot of those people are going to move to Bitcoin because there's going to be games to play. There's going to be Ponzi's and things that maybe might not be super long-term sustainable where people are going to make money. There's going to be shitcoins where people are going to be able to make money. There's going to be really great applications and really great companies that launch applications that are going to have long-term staying power, that are going to become bastions, in my opinion, of the Bitcoin Layer 1 network. And there's going to be a lot of financial opportunity. And with that, there's going to be a lot of capital. And with that, there's going to be a lot of users. And those users are going to want to say over the future of the network that they're using. I know personally, the more and more I started using the Bitcoin network, the more and more ownership I felt over the Bitcoin network. Unlike Ethereum, I don't feel like I have any control over Ethereum whatsoever. The ETH cabal makes the decisions on Ethereum. Bitcoin is completely different. Bitcoin is a place where we can build something like this and do it. And no matter who likes it or who hates it or who loves it or who uses it, nobody can stop us from doing it. And that is freedom. That's true freedom. And in a decentralized blockchain like that is the place where something like DeFi should live. And there should be the ability to have creativity and expressibility. Again, even in things that I don't even particularly use or want to use, like applications that can't be censored. Maybe these are applications that maybe are not allowed in certain countries or whatever, right? Well, on Ethereum, you could literally stop. You could sanction code on Ethereum, right? You can't do that on Bitcoin. No one can stop Bitcoin. So in regards to that, I mean, obviously there's a decentralized mining pools. There's miners all over the place. So even if you got a few of them to stop accepting certain types of transactions or interactions with smart contracts, you can't get them all to stop, and you're not going to get even really a vast majority of them to stop. So yeah, you could theoretically deploy code that privatizes your money or does something.
He's talking about Tornado.cash.
Yes, does something in the realm of security that is not something I personally want to use or build, but you should be able to make something like that and use it on Bitcoin, which is Bitcoin is a decentralized network and you should be able to do this type of stuff. Yeah, I mean, and again, that's sort of the philosophy that we're trying to work within here. Nobody can stop us from doing this, and therefore we're going to do it to the best of our abilities and sort of come what may, you know. We want to help the ecosystem grow. We've got a lot of resources for people who are interested in building. We've got a full team of people. We've got a business developer who can help people when it comes to either fundraising. Danny and myself are obviously in our spare time trying to help the early projects build solid applications and launch their tokens and launch their protocols, launch their applications in ways that is fair and makes sense. And so we've got a lot of resources and on the dev side, there's literally libraries of documentation, libraries of NPM packages and tooling for developers to really make it just fucking easy breezy, beautiful to build applications on Bitcoin layer 1, because that's what it's got to be.
That's awesome. So yeah, it seems as if we are in the place right now where finally what makes sense is finally coming to light. And it's and you ask me how do I keep saying? Well, I keep saying, knowing deep down that what makes most sense will eventually shine forth with the right economic incentives as people seek profit. I think that Opnet is going to be bigger than ordinals, in my opinion. I can't see it not being bigger than ordinals unless something really strange were to happen, where they would be able to completely censor Opnet transactions. But I don't think that's possible because they weren't able to do that with ordinals, right?
No.
So yeah, so it looks very promising. This all looks.
There's only one way they
promising.
can stop it, and Chad and Danny didn't kill themselves. That's what I'll say.
Okay.
Both of us are of sane mental
sane minds.
Thank you guys. Yeah, thank you for what you're doing. So yeah, my audience and well, the Crypto Vigilante newsletter, we've been teaching all sides of the Bitcoin civil war since it happened. And so our subscribers are very keen to all of the developments happening. This is not an echo chamber where people just get one history version of what happened with Bitcoin, or we get all of them at the same time. And that has put our subscribers in the position of being first to Ordi, first to Bitmap, inscribing Bitmap, inscribing Ordi, inscribing Atomicals, just there, inscribing runes when it launched. So, which is very interesting because now we find ourselves having a big blocker ethos growing within BTC. And I know that there's been ambitions within BTC before you guys to have DeFi on BTC. And the project that comes to mind, which actually launched during one of our summits, was a Liquidium. I think it's what it's called, Liquidium.
Yeah.
Now, Liquidium, they don't use Opnet, obviously. They use something else. I forgot exactly what it was. But would now Liquidium have competition with Opnet, with innovations happening within Opnet?
Not directly at all. So the way I understand Liquidium, we've met those guys a handful of times, is they use what's called DLCs. So basically, like, imagine if when you made a loan on Aave, if you've ever done that, instead of the smart contract being the decider of, you know, when your loan clears or not, if it was a multi-sig, basically, it's a 2 of 3 multi-sig that either you and the other end of your loan like both agree on the terms and sign off. If your counterparty doesn't agree, if they refuse to sign, they go offline, then Liquidium can step in and be the second out of the three and sign it so that way your transaction goes through. So again, they're like one of the projects that are building with the current landscape, current array of tools that are available for people to build with. They do a great job for what is available. They're also like, again, ordinals are UTXO based, so it's a little bit more difficult for them because they have to use, PSPTs, they have to use these DLC concepts, all these type of stuff. But if Liquidium wanted to build like an Aave, or if they wanted to build an NFT lending protocol on Opnet, easy. Like it's there are a handful of projects from Ethereum. They could just fork and deploy it, and they don't even have to worry. Yeah.
I will say that I predict, this is not what I hope for, but I do predict that there will be an adapt or die situation for a project like them, because what you can do with the Liquidium platform is fundamentally extremely limited. And then when it comes to doing like lending on these fungible assets, there is not a way to do that without smart contracts that doesn't require some level of custody, or at the very least doesn't function in the way that a truly efficient lending market functions. And if they don't do something like this and deploy on using Opnet, I would say that there's 100% over the course of the next 2 months, probably before Opnet comes live to mainnet, there will be a lending protocol that works just like Aave that will be in development or will launch. And I will say that if Liquidium doesn't try to compete, they will be left behind just because they're using
just based on the token. Liquidium has a Rune token that you can't do anything with. If somebody made the exact same thing as Liquidium, but had a token that earned you a portion of the fees that the platform got you because it's smart contract based and you can just do that, it's like, again, yeah, adapt or die is kind of
also their token circulating market cap is less than the amount of money they actually raised from VCs, and the VCs haven't even unlocked their supply yet. So I would say that over the course of the next year, the Liquidium token will experience a lot of sell pressure because their investors.
Pour it to Opnet. Come on over.
Come to Opnet
love to see it.
Yeah, exactly. And you'll actually really be able to provide a lot of value because why hold the Liquidium token? It's a Rune. You can't do anything with it. You can't even trade in the liquidity pool.
It's like BAMP. It's the same situation as BAMP. And this is like why we're trying to target these Rune-based DeFi protocols, because great, you want to make a Rune DeFi protocol. It's literally impossible. Like that's cool that you want to do it, but it's not possible without a complete uplifting of the Rune protocol. That's not going to happen, and it's not in the works. And
this isn't just us saying this, right? Casey Rodamer, the guy who made the protocol, is on record publicly saying, and he'll probably say it again if he ever hears this, that he doesn't want DeFi to be with Runes. He doesn't want utility to be with. He doesn't want Runes to have utility. And he doesn't want DeFi to happen with Runes. It's just for meme coins and shit coins exclusively.
Yeah,
that's all he wants.
So, what I want to offer to the Runes DeFi project is like, do you want to build a Rune DeFi project, or do you want to build a Bitcoin DeFi project? Because if you want to build just a Bitcoin DeFi project, why the fuck are you a Rune token? Well, you should probably, maybe there's other options as well. It's not just Opnet, but I would be looking to get off of the standard that is providing me like complexities that are not fixable,
Right. Absolutely. And huge credit, by the way, to your audience again for getting into all of these projects early and just basically being alpha hunters. But because again, and this just sort of goes to this mindset that Danny, I think all three of us really share, is that we're constantly looking for what's next. We're constantly playing narratives and we're constantly looking for what's next. And if you're aware, if you don't let the past consume you, if you don't let everything that's happened in the past prevent you from making money. In fact, you let it inform your decisions in terms of trading, you can really have an advantage over other people because you're able to shift your perspective super, super easily because you're not so philosophically aligned or philosophically attached to one idea, right? If you're able to again adapt SNL. Right. If you're constantly able to adapt and constantly are looking for forward thinking ideas, then you're going to be naturally you're going to be on the cutting edge of new narratives. And again, I think that is really the ultimate that's the ultimate advantage to have as a trader. Like that's why Danny and I had any success trading before we started building was because we're pure narrative traders. Neither of us have degrees in this stuff. Neither of us have degrees in blockchain technology, and neither of us have degrees in finance. So we're not traders by blood per se, but we both are really open and willing to pursue new narratives. And that's sort of really what drove us to even make this in the first place, is that we didn't want to sit around and wait for these narratives to form. We wanted to form, force the narrative into existence. And because we were able to be the ones to deliver the tools, the playground for people to be able to build whatever they want to do, we kind of are able to shift that narrative ourselves. And that to me is a really powerful thing.
Dude, I'm speechless because you guys are actually ushering in my dream. Like, and I have to be honest, this has been my dream for many years. Some people have already heard the story. I was part of the Bit Angels network, helping out with investor relations, helping source capital for all the early Bitcoin startups. And I was going crazy because that's where the Civil War really started, was having conversations like, we need a blockchain for this and a blockchain for that. And in my mind, I'm like looking at the Bitcoin protocol and I'm like, dude, we have all of this infrastructure that has not been used that allows us to do all of these things on Bitcoin. It's retarded to start another network of investors, another blockchain. It's all here. So, and then when Ethereum came out, dude, I was such a Bitcoiner at the time that I out of anger, I did not participate in the Ethereum launch. I didn't because, and I was amongst the guys that launched it. I was surrounded by all the early. I was there when Ethereum launched. I was in meetings listening to how it was going to be deployed and so forth.
Wow.
And I was so distraught by what was happening in front of me that I was like, you know what? I guess I was very right curve at the time. I did not understand the insanity of I think a lot of guys like me, we assume that other people were going to be rational and we're going to but the reality is that's just not human nature. So to see you guys do this now, it's almost like finally. It's like,
but yeah, I mean,
so it makes me very happy, guys. Thank you.
You have to assume the unrational nature of people, and then you can really make these more informed decisions on stuff. I mean, hey, look, Danny and I, neither of us minted Ordi because we live for the same reason, dude. Like,
well, I saw it the first day. I was like the third like on Domo's tweet. I was every single day at Ordinals at that time, and I was like, this is retarded. This is the JSON file. There's no way. And then all of my expectations just were blown away. Like I thought that because BRC20s wouldn't allow for DeFi, because it was just this like NFT token, that it wouldn't take off because very quickly after somebody would make a token with DeFi, right? And it seemed more that people, because there wasn't anything that had DeFi, they all bought BRC20s and minted BRC20s and created a market for it on the hope that eventually someone will just figure this out. And it has been a year and a half now, and still nobody has done it because it like isn't possible based on the way you have multiple layers of indexing that are all off chain. Nothing is the same state as the next guy's thing. Unisat runs a different indexer than Best in Slot and the OPI, and Binance runs in it. Like it's so much fragmentation that they can't get their shit together and update the protocol. And then Runes, on the other hand, is like there's one guy who could add programmability to Runes. His name is Casey Road Armor. He doesn't want to do it, which based you don't have to, but
hey, you make your car run. You make your car run however the fuck you want to make your car run. We just want our car to be fucking running really fucking fast. You want your car to be slow because you like slow cars. Absolutely. We want our car to fucking be V8, fucking 300 miles per hour. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I want to put a horse on roller skates,
Yeah.
So we're in the age of these, you could call it protocol wars within Bitcoin. And it seems as if eventually everyone's going to gather around the most efficient token and smart contract protocol. Guys, do you foresee any competition?
Well,
I
we don't see any competition directly to Opnet at all. Like
Okay.
all of basically the space is filled with a handful of people who are trying to do programmability on Bitcoin. But a majority of them are trying to like basically bring programmability to runes or to BRC20 tokens, which that's just like an exit liquidity nightmare. Like who is going to mint? How is there going to be hype around the first BRC20 2.0 token? Like, there's never going to be another Ordi in the BRC20 world, even if there's a million different things you can do with it. It's still going to all just flow to Ordi and be exit liquidity, basically. So there's not really anyone who there's a handful of protocols that are trying to make their own standard. But all of them have a gas token, and a lot of the ones that are doing programmability for BRC20s and runes, they also have gas tokens. So we don't see any of them as competition, but they all see us.
Where they all also require you to take your existing asset and move it to their new meta protocol. So no matter what the solution is, you still can't use the existing asset in whatever the solution is. So they all require you to bridge or burn your BRC20 or your runes token to whatever solution they came up with, which at that point, if you're going to do all that, you may as well just use Opnet because it's you have to do the same thing anyway.
Well, yeah, and Opnet has the chance to be a new thing also. Like, okay, if ordinals existed and it was just a new way to do XCP and rare Pepes, like then it would just still be rare Pepes and the whole market would look at it as still rare Pepes, even if it is more on chain or whatever. So having a brand new thing come in with like a bang, it's riskier if we don't have the initial kind of adoption of the market, but I think we'll be fine because of the reasons that we discussed earlier regarding airdrops.
Well, also, there's gonna be a first tax token. There's gonna be a first reflection token. There's gonna be a first lending protocol. There's gonna be, obviously we're the first DEX, but there's gonna be dominant meme coin players. There's gonna be a first literally everything. So there's gonna be a first DAO, right? Like, there's going to be all these things that the narrative of first is first will be able to repeat and repeat and repeat. And all of these different protocols and applications will be able to interlink with each other. And so whether, the Modo token, you can liquidity mine other tokens with it if you want to bootstrap your new project, or you could easily airdrop tokens if you don't very cheaply to existing communities. So really easily allows you to bootstrap new communities in, whether it's just a meme coin or whatever you want to do. You can, again, like the possibilities are endless, but just to name a few, right? If you want to launch a token for whatever you're doing, let's say you've got an application, you want it to be a governance token. Let's just say you have a meme coin, whatever. You can distribute it in a million different ways. You can free mint a portion of it. You don't have to free mint all of it. You can free mint a portion of it. You can airdrop a portion of it or all of it. You can instantly LP the entire supply paired against wrap Bitcoin and open trading right away, just like you can just like tokens trade on Ether or Solana. You could do any number of combination of all those things. You could also distribute your token from the beginning by allowing people to liquidity mine that token with wrapped Bitcoin or with other existing assets. So there's like almost limitless amount of ways that you can launch tokens. And just strictly speaking, launching tokens, like that's only really the tip of the iceberg too, right? Like, again, in terms of app development, the type of functionality you can bring to Bitcoin layer one, type of programmability you can bring for these assets through these applications is functionally limitless. There can be 10 different stablecoin protocols, and then you can have Curve, and then you can also have 5-10 different lending protocols, and then you can have a yield aggregator for those lending protocols. So as more and more builds, it stacks and stacks and stacks and allows more and more people to build new things. So
the whole point of DeFi is it's Legos. It's permissionless Legos. Like I build one thing, someone else wants to build a thing that uses a portion of my thing. I don't get to say whether you can or can't do that. Like it's fucking insane that Bitcoin, which is the most decentralized place where people don't have to ask to do stuff, is the only place in all of crypto where if you want to do literally anything on top of an existing protocol, you have to get explicit permission from the developers to do it. It's not even like a governance process. Like if I want to do some custom thing with the BRC20, every single BRC20 maintainer has to agree on me doing just one thing. It's a
You
fucking
can't do
nightmare.
that. In fact, they actually can't even agree on doing stuff themselves, right? Like, obviously, Unisat wanted to implement their swap for BRC20s, and Best in Slot OPI Layer 1 Foundation wanted to do maybe their own version or whatever, right?
Well, they wanted to do programmability, and so there's immediately like a conflict of interest because Unisat, which is a company, they're not going to want to agree to do the programmability module for BRC20 because that's going to take their edge away from their swap. And OPI and the Best in Slot, they don't want to give Unisat like first rights to doing the swap because then who knows if they're ever going to get their program. So it's this
That
like
makes no
constant butting of
sense.
heads.
Yeah, that's an environment that makes no sense. So the long story short to your question, and Danny sort of mentioned this, is that I think a lot of other protocols might see us as competition, but we don't particularly see ourselves as competition for any of these other protocols because
For any of them would come with us.
Yes, yeah, because I don't think any of them are going to really be able to do what we're doing, and to the extent that there are programmability, smart contract type solutions on Bitcoin Layer 1, they're all going to have some sort of non-Bitcoin native aspect to them, whether it's your smart contracts living off chain, or you need to use this other network, you need to use this other gas token. There's going to be a million different ideas that come out, and none of them are going to be as Bitcoin native as Opnet, just because we are literally just using Bitcoin. You use a Bitcoin wallet. You're deploying smart contracts directly onto the Bitcoin blockchain into Bitcoin addresses. You're interacting with those smart contracts directly through Bitcoin transactions. There is nothing more native to Bitcoin than Opnet's design. And we did a lot of thinking and a lot of research and a lot of meditating on how should we actually design this so that it gets adoption. And then we also provided on top of that a number of tools for developers to get started in terms of like everything that really makes Ethereum great for development is not so much just Solidity. It's all of the libraries of packages and dev tools that come along with Ethereum, like Ethers or Geth. So we have recreations of those already ready to go for Bitcoin. Day one, and so you can check them out right now. So for developers, it's going to be just so easy, and that's really the thing. Good DevX brings good UX. We have neither of those two things right now, and Opnet brings those two things more than anything else.
That's awesome, guys. Wow, congratulations. So you answered my question. My question was going to be, so will there be an ORDI for, and you said every single type of application that can be deployed within Opnet? It's really up to the creativity of the people that will give you the first vibe of the first DAO, the first Aave, the first this, the first that. So yeah, that's really cool. So there's a lot of innovation to be seen.
There's a lot of innovation to be seen. There's going to be a lot of really cool narratives that I think are going to play out. And I said this on Spaces, but like I'm operating within my imagination. Danny's operating within his imagination of how things are going to play out. Inevitably, it'll probably be something close to what we imagine, but the winners and losers it's up to the free market, baby.
Well,
and so
I think there will be two distinct stages of like Opnet people playing with smart contracts on BitNet. There's going to be people who are just forking. There's 8 years of Ethereum games and smart contracts to like pull from for inspiration, right? So it's not exactly like, well, ask Vitalik what would happen in 2015 with ETH. Like, we have a pretty good idea. We have 8 years of knowledge as to what smart contracts and blockchains can do. So I think there's literally hundreds, if not thousands, of smart contracts or games to like bridge over into Bitcoin and see what the fuck sticks, right? But then past that, there are some like weird stuff that Bitcoin has that ETH doesn't have, specifically like PSBTs and HTLCs and DLC. Like, there are these native things you can do with Bitcoin that when it doesn't have smart contracts, it's kind of irritating. But if you introduce smart contracts on top of the stuff that Bitcoin already has, who the fuck knows what that is going to look like. So I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody does cook up a way to like, tie a UTXO into a transaction so you can have like ordinals, or you can have existing stuff. I don't think we're going to be the ones that do that, but the possibilities are there, and if the market wants it, which I believe it does, I think somebody will definitely do it.
Yep, it's awesome. Yeah, so the UTXO model, is that something that for people coming from Ethereum, is that something that is very different, very
Oh my God,
is it hard,
completely.
is it something to get used to? It also opens you up to a way to scale horizontally in parallel, that where you're not sharing a constant global state. So what I've noticed is that, like with BRC20, well, that was just a direct copy from ERC20, which gave the use of BRC20 to be akin to how ERC20 works on Ethereum. So BRC20 didn't really embrace the UTXO model as I would have wanted to see a token protocol to have
Uh,
done. Is this something you guys address with Opnet?
well, I would. Sorry,
I might push back on that a little bit and just
yeah.
say I would actually say I think actually one of the flaws of BRC20 is that it took the name BRC20, which made it seem like it was similar to ERC20, but it's actually its underlying construction is really, I think, a pretty far departure from ERC20 in terms of what you can do with it. Because okay, like
ERC20 is actually the ERC20 token standard, or ERC721, or any other, take BRC out of your mind, any other blockchain token standard is not a set limit of what you can or can't do with a token. It's a bare minimum of requirements. So an ERC20 token, it must have a balance for certain addresses. It must have an approve function so you can use it in smart contract. It must have a transfer function. There's a handful of other things. I believe it's 5 bare minimum functions of an ERC20. And then you can do whatever the fuck you want on top of those 5, because we're talking about smart contracts here. So like the idea of a token standard in any other concept except for Bitcoin is this bare minimum of stuff you can do, versus on Bitcoin, the runes token standard is not a token. It's just a fork. Every single BRC20 token is a fork of Ordi. There's one token that exists. It's Ordi, right. And every other BRC20 is just a fork of that exact construction of what a token standard is. So OP20, OP20 tokens are actually like the ERC20 standard, where there's a bare minimum of you must have approve, you must have transfer, et cetera, et cetera. But then on top of that, it is limitless, and you can do whatever you want as long as it compiles and works.
For example, like with an OP20 token, you can have an OP20 token that is a standard fungible token, or you could have an OP20 token that has a tax function added into it. So, for example, every time you trade the token, a small amount of that token goes to the deployer of that token, which would really be a really good way for projects that don't have access to funding, that want to raise money, that want to do a number of things, whether it's marketing or whether it's value creation for a DAO, or whether it is fundraising for development. You don't have access to any of those things with the current Bitcoin standards. You can create a tax token where 2% of every single trade goes to the person who deployed that token, so that they can use those funds for whatever reason, whatever they can possibly think of. Obviously, there's going to be an amount of people that just use that to scam, but that's just kind of a given with crypto. There will be really, really good use cases for stuff like that. For example, you could do it where you could have an OP20 token that could, every time you make a buy or a sell, or let's just say every time you sell the token for something else, a little piece of that, you get a fee taken out, and a little piece of that token gets burned. So every time people sell the token, a little bit of the token supply goes down, down, down. So it's a
deflationary tokens, inflation, whatever you want to do.
That's awesome.
You can now do. Yeah.
Right. So
with the okay, nice.
Oh yeah, the OP20 standard, in contrast to something like BRC20, OP20 standard is just the minimum requirement for what a token standard on Bitcoin should be using Opnet. BRC20, the limitations of BRC20 are hard baked into the.
You're gonna fork Ordi every single time. It's gonna be a fork. You can
only deploy, you can only mint, and you can only transfer, and those are the only 3 things you can ever do with a BRC20. Those are the only 3 things you're ever going to be able to do with a BRC20. Even if, by some grace of God, which is not going to happen, but they come out with the BRC20 2.0 thing, which is it's not going to happen. I'll bet a lot of money on that. But they're not going to do that. But if they ever come out with this programmability thing, it's actually going to be a totally new meta protocol. and they're just going to call it BRC20, but it's not going to be BRC20. It's going to be something completely different. So it can be a new standard that they just rebrand as BRC20 because they, I guess, sort of own the brand.
Because Domo says it is. It's like that's the only reason why. It's because the space looks to him for what is BRC20. So if that guy says this new thing is BRC20 2.0, okay, I guess this is BRC20 2.0. Like Unisat is who controls BRC20 though. They control BRC20. That's why Fractal is genius, because they're sick and tired of having to fucking deal with this retardation of the Layer 1 Foundation. It is just, they've had a year to do anything and nothing has happened. And so Fractal is basically like, get your BRC20s off of the main chain and put them on Fractal, because the Unisat company is going to push updates to BRC20, but only on Fractal. So that's the solution for like all these existing protocols. It's a fucking nightmare if you're trying to upgrade into programmability versus just start it over.
Hey, real quick, for those watching, what's the Layer 1 Foundation?
Layer 1
Layer 1 Foundation is a cabal of a bunch of people who basically were involved in the early days of BRC20. And Unisat is a company that Unisat invented BRC20. And they made the first indexer. Domo made the docs for BRC20. So people think that Domo invented BRC20 when he deployed the Ordi token, but Unisat actually invented BRC20. And so the Layer 1 Foundation is like an attempt 6 months into BRC20 existing to create this like federation between Unisat and Binance and OKX and Domo and his gang. And they're trying to like agree on stuff to do, but even just between, it's like 3 or 4 different companies that comprise of the L1F, they can't come to consensus because they have even at just 3 or 4 groups of people, they have extremely conflicting wants and needs for what the fuck do we do with BRC20. So again, Unisat ran the first indexer for BRC20, and they invented the infrastructure for BRC20. They invented like this indexer concept for tokens. And then later on, people started running their own indexers that weren't Unisat's, because Unisat was closed source. So you have basically half the space running this open source version of BRC20 indexers called the OPI. And then you have half the space is using Unisat's company indexer. And Unisat is just taking the hard stance of saying, we're going to move off everything into our own layer, and then try to basically push that to the mainnet at some point as well.
Right. And again, I know a lot of that might sound like, oh, this is a lot of FUD about BRC20. It's just the truth. It's not FUD. Like, it's just the truth about it. Like, this is exactly how it is. You can ask them if they'll candidly tell you, if you are able to actually get in touch with any of these people, that this is the way it is. And again, the reason why they did this is because through Ordi's Binance listing, oh, well, there's no problem with BRC20. It's great. The number's going up. Everything's awesome. And then, all of a sudden new standards start to come out. All of a sudden people are like, well, what if I wanted to build applications? What if I want to do this? What if I wanted to do that? That's half the reason why a lot of people invested in these BRC20s in the first place, is because they thought it was going to go somewhere. Yeah. But the rules for BRC20 are hard-coded into the standard. So deployment and transfer is all you get. So you can't do any building. There's no smart contracts. There's no building you can do. So you can't have any more functionality with that stuff. I mean, this is what we ran into when we tried to build the first iteration of MotoSwap, is like, holy shit, you can't do anything with this stuff. And then we shouted it from the rooftops. And, a lot of people, similar to right now, when it comes to like runes, when we're talking about Opnet, a lot of people were like, oh no, it's going to come one day, don't worry. And then the people who were thought leaders in the space were like, oh yeah, we'll figure it out.
Runes is going to bring DeFi. There's going to be Runes DeFi.
It'll be Runes, or it'll be this. Oh, they'll figure it out. Domo always talks, oh, it'll be recursion, baby. It's like recursion, but you have no fucking clue what you're talking about. No offense to that guy, but he really is not. He has no control over his own protocol, and he's got no concept of how to figure it out. And it's bad leadership. It's a product of launching something without any idea of where you really want it to go, which again, he was just experimenting. So it's really, I don't blame him for any of that stuff, but I do blame him for how he's handled everything since.
Well, because he's been placed in a position where he is the face of BRC20, because he he deployed the first token, but he didn't actually invent the underlying engine of it that allowed for it to be like a tradable thing. So it's this conflict of the face of it is saying one thing that is going to happen or that he wants to happen, but he has no control over what the company, the monster of a company. I mean, Unisat Like I am just beyond impressed with the way they've handled the year and a half they've been in the ordinal space. I mean, have to be sitting on a couple $100 million in just terms of Bitcoin on fees that they took alone. Because they launched when Bitcoin was like 20K. So
They're
they made
also,
a
yeah,
shit
they're a
ton of money.
completely for-profit company. So, right. Yeah, again,
Most based company in the whole Bitcoin space. But yeah.
yeah. Just to wrap this conversation up with a bow, because I know this, to some people this is a little bit irrelevant. But it's important to know why something like Opnet is necessary versus like these existing standards. So given everything we just said about BRC20, there's no shot that BRC20 ever does anything outside of Unisat's version of it that's going to have a lot of success on Fractal, more than likely. And then obviously Runes, Casey himself, the guy who made the protocol. So unlike BRC20, which is fractured.
This is the schism. Yeah, exactly.
Right. It's fractured between people who own it or run it and whatever, right? BRC20 is kind of a big mess. Runes is not so much of a mess. It's just designed by a guy who doesn't want it to do anything besides what it does now, which means that it's going to be limited forever. So that's why the environment, in our opinion, is just ripe for a new meta protocol to come out that just kind of says, hey, BRC20 can't figure it out. They're not going to be able to figure it out. Unisat's pretty much exiting the conversation and saying, we're going to Fractal. Fractal's going to be our thing. We're going to do as much, whatever we want with BRC20 on Fractal. You guys can't tell us what to do here. And Runes, which is just, it's a protocol. It's going to stay the way it is because that's how the guy who designed it wants it. It's for us to say, hey, we have a new solution. It's new. There's going to be new narratives. There's going to be new chances to be first. There's going to be new chances to make money. If you're not philosophically attached to these old standards, if you're not blinded by your attachment to the bags that you hold or whatever, there's going to be a lot of money to be made by just paying attention and being early. That's the biggest alpha I can really give you, is that if you pay attention and you're early and you're active and you stay up on what's going on, I mean, you're going to be in a position to make a ton of money, I think, because there's going to be a lot of new, again, every protocol that launches is probably going to have a token. Every token is probably going to launch on Bitcoin, or else I don't know what else they're going to be doing. And if you're around in the space, then you're probably going to be one of the first people to get there. So that's sort of that's our ultimate alpha to give.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. Again, the one thing that I can say, and I will say, is thank you, because you guys are opening up the world of crypto to a new age, in that we're at the beginning. There was a huge debate which revolved around, can we build something better outside of Bitcoin? And most people in crypto were like, well, we can do something better than Bitcoin outside of Bitcoin. You guys are actually bringing it back, and you guys are doing for Bitcoin what I consider to be the best thing anyone could do for Bitcoin, which is to give it its utility back. So for that, I thank you. I thank you because I don't want Bitcoin to be subject to externalities like BlackRock and whatever else that's outside of the blockchain for its survival. So for that, thank you. Thank you for giving Bitcoin and Bitcoiners a way to grow, to exchange with one another in a way that is peaceful on chain, as we create more things. And I really do hope that Opnet, that just becomes the protocol of protocols within Bitcoin. And if you guys don't, well, at least you paved the way for someone to at the very least match you. I mean, if someone matches you, you're still going to win. They're going to have to outcompete you. And so thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for what you're doing. On a personal level, this means the world to me, because the best way for me to explain this to you or to anyone is, what you guys are doing, you're saving Bitcoin. That's what you're doing. You guys are saving Bitcoin. Otherwise, and not just saving Bitcoin, but you're saving crypto, because if you don't have this on-chain growth, these capabilities available to the end user, then Bitcoin becomes the bitch of Wall Street. And then it's no real, Bitcoin is nothing more than just a speculative asset. That does nothing.
It's just gold, and that's bad. Yeah, yeah,
That's bad.
totally
Absolutely.
agree.
We
Hey,
already
man.
have gold,
Appreciate
you
that,
know?
man.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're very
yeah.
welcome. Yeah.
Good.
Thank you guys for your time.
We build for the dreamers. You're a dreamer. We're dreamers. Like at the end of the day, if someone comes around and tries to outcompete us, I don't know how they would be able to do it, but if they do it, then they're gonna succeed in our mission anyway. And to us, that's also a success. You know
Just
what I
let
mean?
me mint. Just let me mint.
Yeah,
Awesome.
we'll be early to those narratives just because again we believe in this like at our core, this is what we believe in. We believe in bringing functionality to Bitcoin, and so we're if you believe in something, you have to try and make something happen. I mean, again, you can't just sit around waiting for something to happen. Again, like yourself, cultivating community, educating people, making informed decisions, teaching people is a noble pursuit. And that I think would fall into the exact same category. You know, again, like Danny and myself, we took this builder role, even though neither of us were really super experienced builders in the crypto space before. Like we've had experience outside of crypto, but we haven't really had a ton of experience building in the crypto space. We have plenty of experience trading, but
Dude, it's kind of, sorry to interrupt, but it's kind of like, I mean, this is a bad example, but like Ross Ulbricht, right? Ross Ulbricht was not a drug lord before he built Silk Road. Like the beauty of crypto is you can become with it and do whatever you want with it. Like it's what is your vision to implement with this technology? Because at the end of the day, it's just the concept of value being attached to kind of nothing. It's like digital value. So what can you make that is sticky? What do you want to be? What do you want to do? This is the place to do it. This is not a physical realm. Like we weren't builders before this, but I mean, I've personally been in crypto for going on 10 years now, but I've never like ran a project or anything like this. But that doesn't mean that you can't do it. Like in any other industry, if I bought a stock in a company and the company failed, I can't community take over the company with my stocks, like that. It's a lost cause in that situation. But in Bitcoin, I mean, just in crypto in general, but really on Bitcoin, the energy is there to like, I don't know, do whatever you want, become whatever you want.
So today is August 7th. We're filming this August 7th. It should be out in the next couple days once it goes through our editing process. Today you guys launched which was the testnet, right?
Yes.
So when does the mainnet, when does it go live on chain?
Yeah, we're hoping to line up with the release of Fractal. So probably sometime towards the end of September or early October. I do think it's going to be like a slowfi fall/winter, which should also line up. Just personally, I think like the election cycle is always interesting for the market. So I think it'll be a really interesting time to launch stuff in the fall/winter, and that's kind of when we're aiming to launch as well on the mainnet. Yeah.
Yeah. Extremely tentatively, probably lining up with Fractal. Next couple months is probably the aim. What we have right now, while it is pretty comprehensive, is somewhat of an MVP. And there's a few extra features and just a few things we want to shore up before we come live to mainnet. And we also want to give other projects an opportunity to get all their ducks in a row, get their smart contracts built, get their applications built, assemble their teams, raise some capital, etc. So maybe if they're not ready to go on mainnet launch, they'll be ready to launch within the first month or so. So that's about the timeline we're working with right now. Obviously, depends on market conditions, depends on a million different things. Nothing ever goes on time or according to plan, but that's sort of what we're aiming for right now.
So Fractal launches at the beginning of September or at the end of September?
I believe it's towards the end of September. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be the end of September. And again, we'll who knows, there might be a delay on that one as well. That's just sort of the timeline we're working with. We're not like 100% attached to the idea of we're gonna launch when Fractal launches, but it just seems like our timeline is gonna line up around the same time.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for your time. Anything else that you would want to leave people with? Where to find you? Where to follow you? Where to go and get their CRBC tokens?
Yeah, check out opnet.org if you want to learn about Opnet, motoswap.org if you want to learn about Motoswap. All the socials are linked pretty much if you just type in Opnet or Motoswap on the websites as well. The community is a real fun time. I will say the Telegram groups tend to be a little more lively than the Discord groups. So if you're a Telegram guy, definitely hop into those. And if you're a builder, get in touch with us. And there's literally unlimited things to build. So we want everyone and anyone.
Yeah, you don't have to. If you don't want to get in touch with us, you could build on your own. All the documentation is out for you to do it. But we do have some extra resources, and we can just help in a few different ways to help early projects, because we want to cultivate good early projects. We don't want a bunch of bullshit to launch. I mean, people are gonna launch bullshit no matter what. Please feel free to do so. But we want to help cultivate good early projects. So get in touch with us for that. And yeah, again, if you are really interested in speculating early, don't want to sound like we're shilling super hard. There is the Modo token that's circulating right now. You could buy on Ordinal Novice or satsx.io. And that's just marketplaces that you could trade runes or BRC20s and CBRC20s as well. To those who hold CBRC20 tokens, a lot of tokens are going to migrate over. Thank you for sticking with us this whole time. Obviously, shout out to our development team, shout out to our whole team, and of course, shout out to Raf. Thanks for having us on, man.
Thank you. And remember, this is none of this was financial advice. We're just speaking out about cool open source technology that we find fascinating. Thank you for your time, guys. Thank you for everything. And I'm so happy that this is happening because now I can see a path to hyper Bitcoinization. So thank you guys. Peace, love,
HPC baby. Thanks for having us.
Take care, guys. Now we are dealing with a possible world war. Some will say we are already in a world war. My condolences and prayers go out to everyone suffering under tyranny. It really sucks. I'm really sorry. But it seems as if people are starting to wake up regarding crypto more and more each day. And so it's in the description right here to read, where we give our secret sauce and what we teach our subscribers, because things are just that bad. You know, everyone needs this information. People need to know about sound cryptocurrencies that are actually private by default, and to know how to properly use crypto.